hustle and bustle and everything that went on with my mom culminated in her passing back in May. I had a lot of stuff personally going on, like within me, health-wise, that I didn't really talk about in any great length. And I guess I could say that part of the reason is Mom was a good distraction for me, that I was having trouble mentally and emotionally. About 19 years ago, 19 and a half, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And at that time, there were only 3 or 4 treatments you could take, which helped minimize symptoms, and they thought did anyway. They weren't sure. They still aren't sure what exactly happens with them. There's also they didn't really know what was available or what this stuff did to help prevent or slow down the progression. They thought it might slow down the progression of MS, but as it stands, vast majority of people that have MS like I did, the type I had, relapsing remitting, which is the most common kind, will progress eventually to what they call secondary progressive after about 10 years. It's just the natural way things happen. I was lucky that I didn't progress for a long, long time. And going through the emotions of a diagnosis of a chronic illness is devastating on a person. And when I finished going through it, or I was getting through it, I had a job change, which was for the better, which helped, but my MS was still preventing me from working to the extent I wanted on the new job. So I fought in the new job, which I absolutely loved. That was my safety job, working as safety officer for the phone company. I was on and off full-time hours. Even though I was considered full-time, I couldn't work full days off and on. Because I kept having problems with my fatigue. And eventually, 9 years ago, about 10 years after my diagnosis, I had to stop working. And I initially went off. I took a couple of weeks holidays, and then 2 months off under doctor's orders. And the reason I could have just gone on the 2 months off, but my work ethic said if I was traveling somewhere on a holiday, it wasn't the same as being off on a medical leave. You know what I mean? I couldn't put my head around going on a trip to visit my sister when I was on medical leave. I don't believe in that. And, part of the medical leave was for me to rest and get better. But it's just not the way I did it. So I took my couple weeks holidays anyway. And then after the 2 months, the doctor said take 2 more and then another 2. So after 6 months, here, and I have had somewhat of a life compared to what I would have had if I was working. And it took me several years to get over not working anymore. It's just the way I was brought up, and my sisters and my dad were all the same way, that we totally immerse ourselves into our work, for better or for worse type of thing. Then fast forward a few years after I stopped working till about 3 years ago, and seeing the neurologist, MS neurologist specialist, he finally said that my MS had progressed, and it's only a title that they throw on it. It's not really a worsening of the illness. It just means that, the attacks you've had, you made it, there haven't been many, so things are kind of stable, but your symptoms don't get better. I wanted to think that the diagnosis wouldn't make much difference to me. It's just words. Instead of being relapsing, remitting, it's now secondary progressive. And the theory is, with secondary progressive, as you have attacks, you may not necessarily recover from them. As well, you won't recover usually as much, or may not recover at all. Now, of course, that could be a bad thing if I have a serious attack or a serious relapse, which I'm lucky I haven't had any serious ones. And that in itself is one of the reasons they put me onto the secondary progressive, because I wasn't having any relapses to remiss from. So it should mean nothing, absolutely nothing other than work. But I found myself, again, going through the whole grieving process you go through when you're diagnosed. The anger, the terror, the depression, bargaining with God type things you do, and the whole thing ending up with finally acceptance, which kind of threw me for a loop for a while, and I'm still kind of going through it a couple of years later. And I shouldn't be, because it's not really any different. I knew this was coming. It didn't come nearly as soon as I thought it might. Of course, I hope it would never come. But fast forward again to this year and a half, 2 years, I guess, with Mom, from when she first took ill till when she passed, excluding her 3 or 4 years battling breast cancer 2 or 3 times since my dad died. Now, there's not a lot of stuff done for secondary progressive MS. There's really no research done, because there's no money to be made, because there are less people with secondary progressive MS. So the big drug companies aren't looking and researching for any kind of solutions for anything. And they found that the drugs that they have used in the past for relapse and remitting don't really work or do anything for the secondary progressive people. And what's worse is, there's also primary progressive and chronic progressive, and those ones nobody looks at. They're just roll up in the corner and wait to die. It's the way they seem to treat them. Worse than lepers. Well, back in 2013, or 2012, or a couple of years ago anyway, there was a doctor in Italy that came up with this procedure called the liberation treatment, which is what it was nicknamed or coined because of a condition that he found in his own wife who had MS. And what she had was found to have had was blockage in the veins in her neck. What they found was blockage, which was named CCSVI, or chronic cerebral spinal venous insufficiency, CCSVI for short. Now, the theory behind it is the blockage doesn't allow the blood to drain back from the brain as efficiently as it should, so the blood stays in the brain a little longer, which can cause oxygenation problems a little bit. But the thing that I believe they were more concerned about was the iron in the blood would precipitate out, and heavy iron deposits in the brain could be causing the problems. Now, proven or not, they're still doing research on it. And to get that procedure done they would use angioplasty and put a catheter up from your leg all the way up into your neck and open the veins up with a balloon if they found blockage. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to wait for the procedure, so they went overseas from Canada and the U.S. because the only places you could get it were places like Italy or India. Places like that would offer it because their healthcare systems are a profit-making thing for them as well. So, you pay for your airfare and hotel, and you got to go over there for, I don't know, probably a few weeks or a month. And you end up getting the procedure, and they empty your wallet by the time you're done with everything to the tune of about $20,000. And of course, this is experimental, and there's no guarantee it actually works. And there are a number of videos on YouTube where people have shown how they were before, they've shown how they were after, but of course you see a lot of success stories because the ones that didn't succeed don't post the negative results, which kind of skews how people look at it. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a skeptic, I wouldn't say I'm an optimist about this procedure, but I knew enough. Well, for one, I couldn't afford $20,000, although if it was a pretty much guaranteed thing, I had my mom and sister all offer to pay for it. My sister in Ottawa would have likely got it done too, although her MS doesn't seem to be as bad as mine. Well, a study came up, and Manitoba is a hot spot for MS, so is Saskatchewan. But our government is, at the time, still is so screwed up in the medical system that they didn't want to spend any money. They didn't want to spend $10,000 to give people this procedure if it didn't work, for sure. But they were willing to spend $25,000 a year per MS patient to buy them and pay for these drugs that we were taking. The MS clinics in Saskatchewan and Manitoba joined up to work on this CCSVI research study where they were going to do a double-blind tests and the procedures for 100 people, I think it was, or 120 or something, 150. And based on how much Manitoba was willing to spend on it, they're going to do 20 people from Manitoba. That's, they're really committed to helping us. So they're going to do like 20 out of the 100 and some that they're going to do. That's all that Manitoba will pay for. Well, I put my name in as soon as this came up, and we did it as a random draw for people. They would draw the first 20 names. They wouldn't go based on when you're registered. And then they would test you, and you had to meet certain criteria and everything. So I didn't hear back for quite a while. And I knew it was going to be a while because they said it was going to take a while to figure it out. And they finally did. And I wasn't selected to be one of the ones in the research study. So I kind of let it go. And then just late April, mid-April, I got a phone call from the research group. They had gone through the initial 20 people and gone through several more, I guess, that they'd call up a few at a time. And they still didn't have their 20 people that they wanted. So my name came up. Now, you've got to understand, for someone with secondary progressive MS, there is nothing else to do. Just let the disease run, and whatever happens, happens. There's nothing. This is the end of the line, so to speak. So, of course, I got my hopes up. Because not only would I have a chance at this, and whether it worked or not, I figure it's worth a chance. But I'd get it done for free, whether I had the procedure done the first time or not. Cops sitting there with radar. Now, whether you got the procedure done or not was a random thing, but after a while you'd eventually get it. And I'll go through that maybe later on in the video, but it's going to end up being long anyway, or multi-parts. I went in and got the ultrasound done, and they do the ultrasound on your neck to see if there's blockage. And they give you 3 chances at it. And the person that they have doing the ultrasounds is the best one in the business for finding this problem in Manitoba. She did the ultrasound, and you get the results right away. You go back to the waiting room, and she looks at the parameters of your scan, and then makes measurements, and there's a percentage, and they're looking for the magic number of 50% blockage before they'll consider you. Well, it took her a while to calculate it, and it turns out that they said that they wouldn't say I don't have blockage. They won't say I don't have blockage. And what they also say is if you are turned down, you get 2 more chances at it. So I was told I didn't meet the criteria. But I was also told, and I read between the lines a little bit, that the technician said, or the technician told the nurse who told me that tried to work the numbers, and the blockage wasn't there. So it's either not there, or it is there, or it's a percentage. If they're working numbers, to me, that sounds like it's close. She's trying to figure out what exactly, is it 48%, 46%? But if it's like 10, 15, 20%, they're not even going to bother to try and measure it 3 or 4 times and may double, triple check their numbers. So I was turned down. And I said, okay, well, right away I told them I wanted to be retested. And there were some people, several of the people that passed on their 3rd attempt. Well, 2nd attempt came up a week later. And I went in, and same thing. I didn't meet the criteria, and she crunched the numbers. Mom was lucid enough that I told her that I had been accepted for this research study. That's all I told her. Now, when the 3rd attempt came up, it was the day before Mom passed away. And it took the lady almost 3 times as long doing the ultrasound, and they said, it'll take this long, unless they find something, or if they're just trying to make sure. So the 3rd time came, and she spent more time on the ultrasound, and I sat for probably an hour as she was working the numbers. And the nurse came out, and of course, at the 3rd strike, and that was it. My chances at this procedure went down the tubes. The nurse said she tried working the numbers every way possible, and just couldn't get it. So that tells me I was right on the line of 50%. So they basically say I don't have blockage, and they won't tell me until the study's done, so that'll be 3 to 5 years. So the day before Mom died, I was given this news that not only is it strike 3 to get this procedure done, it was strike 3 for anything at the current time for secondary progressive MS, and that really devastated me. And of course, I didn't really talk to anybody about it, because Mom was bad, and then the next night she passed away. So we go into that mode, and then working on her house and everything, and it's just been a real shitty time for me. This whole summer, it was lousy weather. I was really down. Anyway, I'm going to close it down saying that it hasn't been a good year for me. It hasn't been a good summer. Nothing's been good about the whole year. Long story short, I'm really down on myself, down on life, working my way through it. But until something happens, just keep on keeping on. So, for lack of a better thing to do, take it easy.